I know I'm signing on a little bit early, like a minute early, but just whenever you hop on to watch the video, just leave a little notes, let me know you're here, just say hi, so I know who I'm talking to. Okay, so welcome to the Thriving as an Empath and Highly Sensitive Person Challenge. I'm super, super excited about this challenge. This is like one of my favorite things to talk about. I love talking about being an empath. I love talking about qualities that go along with that, being a highly sensitive person, and how things sort of fall into place or kind of make sense after you have that kind of description for yourself, if you feel like that fits. So I really love talking about this stuff. And I also really love talking about ways that this can be super awesome in your life, right? And ways to not let some of these qualities kind of drain you or hold you back in a way that you don't want. So we're going to talk about all kinds of good stuff this week. So, okay, let me back up though. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Alyssa Adams. I am a clinical psychologist and also a nutritionist. And so to kind of combine some of that, I have a coaching practice where I do holistic wellness and intuitive life coaching. So what I'm really trying to accomplish is helping people really bring wellness into their lives and also kind of address those things that are impacting them having the life that they want, while also really connecting to their intuition and helping learn how to tap into that so that that can help guide them on their path and in their kind of everyday life. So, okay, sorry, there's this bug flying around. Sorry about that. Anyway, so I wanted to talk today just a little bit about what is an empath, what is a highly sensitive person. I want to talk about some of the books that I really enjoyed that really kind of describe things for me to really help me understand sort of what that means. Okay, so this is fuzz. This is not a bug. Anyway, sorry. Okay, so the first time that I was kind of introduced to the phrase or the word empath was actually by a professor of mine. So I had a supervisor, clinical supervisor, professor, when I was in graduate school who was teaching my first course on kind of how to do therapy. It was a cognitive behavioral therapy class, and my supervisor was doing some one-on-one supervision with me, and he described me as an empath, which I thought was kind of interesting because I'd never really heard that term before. I knew what empathy was, but I didn't know exactly what it meant to be an empath or what he was meaning by that. And he described it actually as a character on Star Trek and described the character and sort of what she was like and how she was able to really feel the emotions of another person as they were her own, and she was able to really connect with other people in that way in her role on the show. So I've actually never seen this character in actual life on the show, but I looked up stuff about her and I was trying to figure out what that meant, right? So he described that sort of empathy and that type of being able to really be with the person and be in the experience with them as soulful, which I thought was also a really cool description, right? Of being able to share an experience with someone in this way that's sort of like a soul connection, right? It's kind of a neat way to describe that. So that's always really stuck with me, and it's always been something that's super interesting to me. And what does that mean on like the spectrum of experiencing empathy, right? So maybe some of us are further over here on the spectrum, right? Where we really very easily sink into feeling and experiencing what others are experiencing, feeling the emotions of others, feeling the physical ailments of others, feeling the distress of others, feeling the discomfort, that sort of subtle energy that people give off, really feeling that quite easily, right? And then, there's some of us who maybe feel that in certain contexts or feel it in a certain way, but maybe not as intensely. And then there are other folks kind of down here on the spectrum that maybe experience empathy to some degree, but don't feel that same level of connecting with other people or being kind of really immersed in the energy of others. And having that kind of ability to feel the emotions of others, that sensitivity to the subtle energy that other people are giving off, is a really important thing to be aware of, right? Because for me, I felt like oh, everybody else is just like this, right? Everybody else feels the same things. Everybody else picks up on these really subtle cues that people give off, or the emotions of someone, or how somebody might be feeling, or how someone's reacting to something. I was reading somewhere about like how, you know, people who are particularly empathic, identify as empaths, identify as highly sensitive people, always know when somebody doesn't like them, right? Which is funny because that's something that I've said to people like throughout my life, right? Like I can always tell when somebody doesn't like me, or they're reacting negatively to me. I can't not see it, right? I'm sure many of you are like that too. And then I can't act as if I don't see it, right? There's sort of this kind of authenticity that comes along with, I think, noticing some of these things and wanting to either bring it to the attention of others, or sort of have someone else in your world experiencing that same truth that you're experiencing. But it did take me some time to realize that, like, I actually don't need other people to share that same truth. I don't need other people to kind of validate what I'm feeling or seeing or experiencing. Sometimes it's nice, sometimes it's helpful, but I don't rely on it as a meter of whether I'm right or not, or if it's true for me or not. Because regardless of what they say or think, it is true for me, right? And learning to trust that intuition, trust that instinct has been super important for me. So that's a little bit of a tangent, but okay, so that's talking a little bit about empaths. I want to talk a little bit about highly sensitive people. So the quote that I think is helpful to remember is that all empaths also are highly sensitive people, but not all highly sensitive people are also empaths. It's sort of a slightly different connotation. So highly sensitive people, I'm going to roll right into some of my favorite books here. Totally amazing book. I know it looks backwards. The Highly Sensitive Person by Dr. Aaron. I guess I'm not totally sure how to say that. Awesome. Super great book. It's such a wonderful description of kind of what it says in the literature about highly sensitive people, and really describes very accurately that kind of overstimulation and that over-arousal that happens more on a hair trigger, kind of having that fight or flight system more on a hair trigger than others. So knowing that you're going to kind of be over-aroused or overstimulated in other situations where other people may be more steady, which is fine, right? It's just a thing. There's no judgment. It's not good or bad, right? But I think having that description, having that explanation, and then kind of like going through times in your life where you can realize that or notice that. Like for me, I know my heart rate is always going to run a little bit high when someone is checking my heart rate, because I feel like I'm under stress, or I'm like sort of stimulated by the situation. I'm at a doctor's office. I know somebody's checking it. I know that I just know it's more on a hair trigger. I know my whole system is on more of a hair trigger. So I know that things are going to like shoot my heart rate up, or getting my autonomic arousal system going more so than others. So maybe I'm sweating, maybe I'm feeling something, maybe my heart rate is shooting up just because I've had to say something in a meeting. So I think just kind of knowing that and kind of understanding that about yourself can be really helpful. So having that kind of response where, you know, you're sensitive to different things in your environment, maybe scents, maybe emotions around there, maybe the vibe of the room, maybe chemicals or perfumes or things that feel sort of intrusive to you. But I really like to think of it in that way too, of having your sort of system being a little bit more on a hair trigger, a little bit easier to be overstimulated. And she does this really great job of explaining this like pause to check system, right? So when encountering something new in your world or in your life, like maybe having a little bit more of a cautious approach where you're trying to decide, like, is this safe? Is this overstimulating? Is this too far out of my comfort zone? What is this? This kind of cautious approach, having a little bit more intense pause to check system. So my dog is like making some kind of weird noise over here. So just, he's in his crate. I don't know what he's doing. He's fine. But if you hear a noise, that's what it is. So I really like thinking about things in that way because it helped describe a lot for me. and being able to kind of own the fact, like, hey, I may be overstimulated at a party sooner than the people that I went with, or I might be more tired in certain situations if I'm not doing enough to protect my energy, if I'm not doing enough to manage my stress, if I'm not doing enough to pay attention to where and who I'm surrounding myself with. That's really, really important to me. So I think for empaths and highly sensitive people, I like to think about our energetic resources like chips, right? Like imagine chips that you're playing poker with or something, right? And you have sort of a finite amount, right? So what are the things that fill you up, that kind of give you more chips? And what are the things that drain them, that take the chips away, right? And how quickly does that happen for you? So really being able to understand kind of how that works for you, because it's going to be a little bit different, a little bit unique for everyone. You know, what are the situations, what are the people, what are the environments, social settings that kind of pull away from your chips? And then what are the things that you do or need to have in place to restore or fill those chips back up, right? So that is something that's really important to me to think about, because I know that I have a tendency to either say yes or maybe be more social than my body wants at a particular time. And I'm constantly kind of checking in and doing that dance of like, how much energy am I expending? How much do I need to restore my resources? Like, where is that balance? And have I tipped too much this way? Have I not? What are my signals to myself? Is it being tired? Is it a headache? Is it feeling kind of muscle aches? Is it feeling like I've just had too much kind of cortisol, too much adrenaline kind of pumping out, and I'm just sore and tired and pooped? And noticing that and not blowing past it like it's not happening, right? So just being able to acknowledge that like your level of tolerance, your level of stimulation is different, and that's fine. But being able to manage it and preserve it so that you're not always exhausted, so that you're not getting a bunch of physical ailments, so you're not dealing with a lot of stress-related physical issues, because for you, that overstimulation and that stress is happening more regularly if we're in situations where it's going to happen to us, or we're not protecting ourselves well, or just in everyday life, right? We're just going to be a little bit more stimulated than other folks, and that's all right. So I think that piece of those sort of energetic exchange of chips can be a really helpful way to think about life. And even as an exercise to think about, like, here's a list of all the things that I find really draining. Here's a list of things that are sort of neutral for me. And here's a list of things that I feel really fulfilled and energized by in a good way, that really kind of fill me back up. So I like to think about stuff that way. Like, I know I love presenting at like a conference or a group or doing workshops. I love it. I really, really love presenting, but it is also very stimulating to me, right? I'm sweating. I don't have any fear of speaking, but I'm just aroused. I'm just stimulated. Like, I'm sweating and my heart's pounding, but I'm not nervous, right? It's just, I don't have any cognitive thoughts of being nervous. I'm not stressed. I'm excited. But I'm overstimulated. So I'm still doing things to sort of calm myself down so that I can engage in this thing that I enjoy while not feeling super overstimulated. But that's just kind of my default, right? So I also know that at the end of those days, I need to do something for myself that is quiet, possibly alone, where I'm just restoring my energy and calming myself down and giving my body a chance to reset, because I need the time to reset. I know I do. I didn't always know I did, right? Sometimes I would blow past and then be like, oh yeah, I'll go to a party, it'll be great. And then the next day I would be so exhausted, I wouldn't put the two together. But I'm better about that now. So thinking about that, right? What are the things that you may need to sort of do some more recovery from, or to adjust in a way where you're saying, hey, all right, I can go to this party Friday, but Saturday I need to stay home. These are just examples, right? But what are the things that restore you, and making sure that you're having enough of that kind of quiet, maybe alone, restorative time, whatever it is for you that is restorative. Okay, so there's two more things I kind of want to talk about a little bit today. I want to go back through the book. So this is one of my favorite ones, Highly Sensitive Person. Great book. I highly recommend it. Awesome. Empath Survival Guide by Judith Orloff. Amazing. Also fantastic book. Totally check this out. Also easy reads, right? They're not super dense, but really, really interesting. And then this one, I actually just started, The Highly Sensitive Person in Love, which I think is really cool to talk about sort of how you are unique in relationships and what that means. I think it's super cool to think about and talk about. So anyway, those would be the books that I would recommend. And the last thing that I want to kind of leave you with today as a prompt to think about is, you know, what limiting beliefs, what stories are you telling yourself that have come up for you as a result of being an empath, being a highly sensitive person? And what have people told you about yourself that you've taken on to own and to make true for yourself? You know, has someone told you, hey, you're too sensitive, or hey, you need to toughen up, or those are just examples, right? But what are those things that people have maybe told you that you've now sort of taken on and owned and made yours that may or may not even be accurate or may not describe you? But we all have those things in our heads, right? For a limiting belief for myself, something that I'm still working on is this, like, in order to sort of be a relaxed, like, calm, cool person, everything sort of has to be okay with me. And I'm like, sure, that's fine. Sure, that's okay. Sure, that's fine. Even when I'm tired, even when I don't want to do the thing, even when someone there is annoying me, like, what I can't, of course I can have needs. Of course I can have opinions. Of course I can say, no, I don't want this, or this isn't fun, or I don't like this, or I need to leave, or I'm tired. But being in this place where you don't feel comfortable always asserting that need that you have. In some circumstances, in some ways, I feel super, super assertive about those things. And then in other contexts, I just don't. So I'm trying to work through that, right? But that belief that, like, I can't need stuff, or I'm going to be like a pain in the neck or something, right? And I don't want the other person to feel uncomfortable. So still a thing that I'm working on. But thinking about that, right? You know, what are these stories that people have told you about yourself? Or what are these things that people have said to you that you've sort of taken on to make your own? You know, you can even journal about it. You can talk to someone about it. You can just sit quietly and think about it, right? But they don't have to be true for you. Just because someone else has said them doesn't mean that they're accurate. And maybe some of it is, and who cares, right? Maybe that's fine. But really thinking about that, I think, can be helpful as we try to define who we are and what our life looks like, sort of as an empath, as a highly sensitive person. So, okay, so that's our intro for day 1. I will see you guys tomorrow. I'll do another video tomorrow. I forget what we're talking about tomorrow. Oh, research. Fun stuff. The science of empathy. Cool things. So, anyway, feel free to post in the comments or share anything that feels important to you. All right, have a good evening. Bye.